We know the transition from high school to post-secondary can be challenging. For youth who struggle with their mental health, this transition can be that much more complex. What role can parents take to assist? What supports are available to our youth? And what can be set up ahead of time to support a smooth transition? We hope to normalize the struggles that sometimes comes with this new stage in our youth's lives. Welcome. My name is Victoria Kettis. I'm a mom. I'm a manager and facilitator here with Family Smart, and today I'm joined by two lovely people to help us answer all these questions. Welcome. So let's take a moment to let our viewers know you and get to know a little about who they're learning with today. Let's start with you, Dawn.
Hi, everyone. My name's Dawn Schell. I'm the Manager Mental Health Outreach and Training at the University of Victoria.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Melissa Feddersen, and I am the Manager of Campus Wellness and Education at UBC's Okanagan Campus. I'm also the mom of two teenagers, one who's getting ready to make this transition about a year from now, so starting to think about this as a mother as well as a clinician.
Awesome. Thank you. So exciting. So starting college or university is an exciting time in our youth's lives and in ours, but it's also one that is full of concern for us parents and caregivers, especially if our youth is struggling with their mental health. So many see school look a certain way. You go right after high school, you stay until you're finished. But over the years, we've learned that post-secondary can look many different ways. And that's a good thing. So what do parents and caregivers need to consider as they plan with their youth for post-secondary? Melissa, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Victoria, because I think that youth are surprised that there's so many ways to go through post-secondary, and there is a lot of pressure, especially some of our international students who do feel that pressure to finish it as rapidly as possible and get home and make income and those types of things. But there is a very normal variations in that pathway. Most students don't do it in 4 fast years. They take the opportunity to do different things like a go global class and do something overseas and take a course in the summer, or to reduce their workload a little bit because they want to get a higher GPA. Schedules are very surprising for students. I think they are used to going 9 till 3 every day and having very little flexibility in their schedules. And so they're very surprised when they get their timeline and it says, oh, I've only got 3 hours of that course a week. That's awesome. I have a 3-hour lecture and I don't have to do anything else. That means I can work a ton and I can do lots of adventures with my friends, and not really realizing that for every 3 hours of class, it's a ton of work outside of the classroom environment, or that they take on a new work shift or think they can work more than they should be, and can get pretty overwhelmed, because the beginning of the term, it is actually quite easy. There's no deadlines, there's no papers due until midterm. It's not as many small course or small assignments like in high school, and so students think, oh, I can just do that one assignment the week it's due, or instead of really understanding that these projects are worth 30% of your mark. They're a huge thing. Also find that a lot of university students are surprised by the complexity of university, right? These are students who have been the top of their class academically, and then realizing, oh, everybody here is the top of their class academically. It's a different place when they transition to university. And so the students that have never had to do homework before are surprised that how much homework they need to do to keep caught up. So there's a lot of change here. And I think that's what makes it very complex for students, is that we go from, especially if they've been struggling with their mental health in high school, they go from, oh, I've managed to hit a healthy rhythm during grade 12. I wake up at this time. I've got a good routine. My mom's helping me with my routine. My dad's getting me to school on time, to mom and dad aren't getting me there. My routine is all messed up. I don't know when to take my meds. Everything shifts. And so it is a time of a lot of change. And for a lot of students, that can be great. They're ready for that change. They're ready to create a new identity. They're ready for shifts. And sometimes they put a lot of pressure on that shift. I'm going to be all new. Everything's going to be better. These are going to be the best 4 years. High school sucked. I hated it. And college is going to be different. And I'm going to be better. And sometimes there can be some disappointment there too, because it's not everything that the movie has promised them, or that kind of sense of wherever we go, there we are. We still bring ourselves with us, so that sometimes there's those complexities too, is that we want to recreate ourselves, but we've still are still ourselves, and so we need to recreate ourselves within those confines. So yeah, it's a big transition. So I think it's really important that parents be kind of tuned in to how big of a change it can be, and even during those first month or so, it's a real roller coaster ride. They are making, some students make a lot of new friends. Some people struggle. They have grown up in a small town. They've never had to make a friend because they've had the same friend since kindergarten. So there's a sense of isolation. And those are all really normal feelings and transition. And who am I outside of my family? Who am I outside of those friends? And sometimes as parents, we only hear from our kids when they're really struggling, and there might be more things going on that are positive, but we only hear when things are hard. So really looking for through that for early transition about ways to stay connected and engaged. I think those are some of the most important elements of this transition time.
Now, one thing you mentioned is that it does look different, and that 4 years isn't the way it used to be. So I'm wondering, when I think about university transfers, so there's another way to be able to do things, that we don't have to actually start in university or college, that we can still do some things that will transfer into university. Do you want to speak a bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really wise way to go. I know that's something that we're talking about at our house, is that, and I'm not sure if it's true or if every parent feels like this, but I'm wondering if COVID has made some of that social development a bit slower for some of our kids. And so for my son, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you're going to be quite ready for full university right away. I don't know if you have interest in that. So what if you just do some courses, get your English out of the way at college, upgrade a couple things so that you don't have to worry about that, get your grades up just a little bit, because it's been so fun to be back with your friends, and maybe you haven't taken school as seriously this last year. I'm not speaking for my son, of course, but those pieces where it can be that you take a few courses to get things tightened up, to try a college or university course before you fully enroll, and just see the difference, see what it's like. And those are easy to transfer. They can, doing one or two can help to sort of test the water, see what people are interested in, and take the pressure off having to make like massive life decisions in grade 12 where they're still not sure. Like maybe they want to try out a couple things. Maybe they haven't had the opportunity, especially during the last few years where things have been a little bit more limited about what they were exposed to. What could they try out that would help them get a better sense of what they want to do when they really are ready to engage in university life? So that's what we're talking about at our house. So yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for the permission for it to look different, that it doesn't have to look this linear way that we've been led to believe it has to look. Dawn, I'm wondering if there's things that we can do ahead of time before they go to university to make that transition just a little easier for them.
Well, one thing that Melissa mentioned that I think is really important is that establishing that communication. How is this communication going to look between us, particularly if the student's not at home? In some cases, the student might be there. It still might be, how are we going to communicate? How are you going to tell me, number one, about how you're doing, if you're at home and if you're not at home? So being able to think these things through before we get to the point where we might need more. Melissa also said, and it's very true, often students only will contact parents when they're in difficulty, instead of calling to say, hey, I had a great day, it was awesome, I learned something today. And so knowing like how often do I expect my student to call me, and how often does the student want to hear from the parent, and what way? Is it by email? Is it text? Is it, TikTok videos? Like, how do you want to be communicated with? But also thinking through like what decisions or difficulties or situations do you expect your child to manage on their own first? Like if they're gonna have they tried something first, is that something that you expect from them? And when do you want them to seek your input for sure? That could be about finances, that could be about anything at all. And so, establishing that communication line and figuring out how it works. I know some folks have done a text every day, and if I don't hear from you, then I'll know something's up. And, it's also then knowing what is it that person, your child, would like you to do with that information. Um, when do we have permission to maybe reach out to residents or reach out to your friends or reach out to maybe counseling or health or somebody to check on you. So it's thinking those things through ahead of time and having that conversation. It can feel a little awkward and
Hmm.
uncomfortable to like, I don't know, I'm trying to think this through, but these are important questions ahead of time. It can really help establish, what our check-in strategies will be, how we're going to do this together so that we both feel comfortable on either side. And there's lots of other things like communication is one, and it's also then knowing what is available, whether it's college or university, like what's available to support somebody. So, if somebody's do they need tutoring? And if so, what tutoring might be available? And where is it? And what are the costs on campuses? I know, for
Hmm.
example, at the University of Victoria, we have an amazing math and stats tutoring support center, but it's also a learning center. So people can just drop in. And it's free and it's run by fellow students. So it's really helpful to know these things. Uh, what are they? Where are they? How do you access them? And get it set up ahead of time if you possibly can. I know many institutions do that. And it's also thinking through, like, if your child's going to be in residence, for example, what does support look like within that context? So we have student staff in our residence who can be a contact point, but we also have staff who are there to support the student staff and the students with what's going on. So it's knowing what's there, what's possible, at which point do they want us to make contact with residents, etc., and many more um, kinds of ideas that I can think of, like how to build independence. Maybe also how do I connect early with those resources that are on campus. I know for myself, it's not frequent, but it's been frequent enough that I have appreciated it, that students who are coming from high school who know they've had mental health issues have made an early contact. So they've met me as a counselor, which is another part of my role I didn't mention earlier, so that when they're in difficulty, they've already connected and already have a human being that they know, that they can say, okay, now I need another appointment with you. So they've come, introduced themselves. We've had like an introductory session to get a sense of what their needs might be, how they're going to do. And in a couple of cases, I haven't seen them for a whole term and maybe just near the end. So like, oh, I need some help. In other cases, it's been a little bit more regular, but they've come in and at least said, here's somebody that I actually feel like I know, so that
Hmm.
when I'm in
Hmm.
trouble, I have somebody who's right here.
That's awesome. Thank you. When I think about some of those things that you've shared, I hear a little bit of the idea that if we were to practice some of these things with our kids in advance too, that might be helpful to give them
Yes. Yeah.
abilities to go off and do some of these things on their own. Super lots of kindness to all you parents who haven't had the chance to do that with their kids. But do you want to speak a bit about what that could look like for young people?
Well, some of the making appointments themselves, even if it's like I make my dental appointment, so that you get through that. I don't know if it's a barrier. I'm not sure that's the right word, but get over that. I'm talking to somebody, I'm setting this up, I'm looking at my calendar, I'm practicing that kind of skill. I like the idea of, I did this. I had the summer before I went to university, I was actually living with my aunt and uncle while she was going to school, but I was taking care of the kind of household stuff. And so it was one of those opportunities, the first time I'd been away from home for an extended period of time. So it could be house sitting, maybe. So you try what it's like to be on your own and to have to take care of these things. So it's thinking through some of those ways that you can practice independence, or is it
Hmm.
about you manage your own money, you make those own decisions, and let's help you figure that out as well. I think it's
Mhm.
different for
Hmm.
many different families.
Yes. Well, as parents, I know we find comfort in being able to be there to catch them when they fall. And as they leave home, we have those fears around them being able to manage on their own. So practice feels important. Melissa, I know that you have some thoughts around too. How can we find balance between assisting them and them becoming more self-reliant?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is one of the things, and we've really noticed it in practice. Students are a little intimidated to make their own appointments and do those types of things. But it's critical. Like, this is one of the health literacy skills that a young adult needs to achieve so that they can become a functional adult, right? They do need to be able to become self advocates, and, sometimes they're going to, in a university environment, that's part of the conversation that I always talk about, is that university is awesome, but it's not awesome always. And there's right timing for university, and there's right season for it. And it's time when you're able to be at your best, because it is challenging. And so when how do we help students to be at their best and in a space, for parents to be aware that it is a space where we are pretty protective of people's confidentiality. I know this is one of the things that we struggle with as parents. It's tricky when our young people move into keeping stuff private, and that they have things that they don't want their parents to know everything, and they are trying to set up some boundaries with their parents. It's really hard for us. But that is something that sort of university health centers do. They don't share information and those types of things. So that, to be aware of that. One of my favorite things that I see parents do is to take their young person on a tour during move-in weekend, or the week before school starts, or sometime in August. They come with their young person, they tour around the institution, they come up to student wellness, and they make an appointment together, and they say, this is how you do it, and this is where you come. They make sure the student has the phone numbers, they program it into their phones so that they know how to make an appointment. They go on the online platform so that students know how to do it, so that the parent is assured that the young person does know how to do it. We have seen that when parents make appointments, and so we've moved away from allowing that, even not me, but within the counseling practice, because there's so many no-shows when somebody else makes an appointment because, oh, I have a midterm then, mom, you didn't know. You checked my course schedule, but it's outside of normal times, or I picked up a work shift,
Mm-hmm.
or I did all of these things. So they're frequently, or maybe it's that I actually don't want to go. I'm not interested in seeing, you think I want to see a counselor, but I actually don't want to see a counselor.
Yeah.
That challenging season in a young person's life, where they make new decisions for themselves. That can be hard for us as parents. And so those are some of those policy things that are annoying as parents, that are what can happen. And so that opportunity to just really coach your young person and how to make those appointments becomes so important, and is one of my favorite things that I see parents do before their
Mm,
student comes.
great. Thank you. It always helps parents and caregivers to gain the perspective of other young people who are not being parented by us or cared for by us. So, Dawn, you've spent time from learning from high school students, and you were struck by the questions students were asking on this topic. Do you want to share some of what you learned from youth about what they're worried about?
Yeah, it was a really revealing experience recently to have sat with about 100 grade 11, 12 students, and to hear the questions that they had for university and college counselors about, what this experience will be like. And one of the first ones was, what are the best ways to develop independence? And further conversations that I had after our panel discussion as well, where students were really, I want to do this. And I was so pleased to hear them say they wanted to do it respectfully. They wanted to do it in a way that, they wanted to work with their parents. In some cases, it was, I don't even know how to have this conversation. So but it was encouraging to hear that they were saying, I want to be able to take these on, as well as really wanting to know, how can I manage stress? How do I deal with anxiousness and worry? How do I balance all of these things we've been talking about? The university experience can be rich and full, and how do I do the things that I want to do and also make sure that I take care of myself? And one person said it feels impossible. I have no
Mm.
idea how I'm going to manage all of these things. So being, looking at, how do I balance these? How do I incorporate self-care? How do I manage, my overthinking? So there were a lot there, but it was also one other comment was, how do I tell parents I might need help? And certainly I think for all of us as human beings, knowing how that we can ask for help, the when to ask for help, how to receive help or support or assistance is also a life skill that we all need to keep learning. And
Mhm.
so, how do I reach out? How do I know? And how do I talk to my parents about what that might look like? And also, if I lose, if I go off track, how can I remotivate myself? All of which was telling me that students were really wanting to know, how do I do this thing and get the best out of it and do it together with parents was very
Mhm.
encouraging to me.
Mhm.
That is very encouraging. And as I think about college and university, and Melissa, you said this earlier, that it's portrayed as the best years of our lives. But for many,
Mhm.
it is not. It's super stressful, and not just the normal stressful that is going to help us. But Melissa, what would you want parents and caregivers to know to help them prepare their youth for this, not looking like they've been led to believe it's going to look, and also to consider
Mhm.
how to have a plan if it's too much, like it's been spoken about in this last conversation.
Yeah, I that's been sort of something I've been a little locked into with my own children and in the university. The concept that there's always a solution. There's always we can always together find a way through. I love to tell parents about the W, the medical withdrawal. If your mental illness gets worse and you need to take a season off, a medical withdrawal won't impact your transcripts. Trying to stay in and failing will. And there, like I said, there's a time for everything, and it doesn't all have to be right now. It doesn't have to be in these 4 years. It doesn't have to be super fast. So I really try to reinforce the um, escape hatch. I talk about it as an escape hatch, that young people do need to know that they can get out of it. Stuckness is a dangerous space for young people, to feel that they are stuck in financial distress or letting us down, or that we'll be so disappointed in them if they can't make it through first year, or whatever can make a young person feel stuck is a dangerous position for them to be in. If they can see a way out, it's a much safer way for them. And so just always ensuring that your young person knows that there's always a pathway to something else, that even if they take a break from university, it does not mean they're not going to get to university. It's just not now. There's a time for everything, but not everything all at once. So dealing with our mental health can be enough in some seasons, and we just need to concentrate on that to get really healthy and strong so that we can be successful at university
Mm.
a little later down the road. And I just think that whole concept of making sure it's a fluid thing for young people keeps them much safer. And so when we're trying to balance motivating our students, which absolutely, my kid needs me kicking his butt all the time to stay motivated. But I've never, the need to make sure that that motivation doesn't make it sound like this is the only way for him. Like this is if he doesn't make it through university, he will not have a successful life. That's absolutely not true. Some of the most successful people in the world didn't have a successful first year at university, or didn't even go to university, but so just to create lots of different ways of approaching this thing so that it doesn't feel so rigid that we're going to get stuck in it. I really think that's an important piece. And also really helping students recognize their signs of stress when it's getting overwhelming. Young people really do need to understand. I always think we do a disservice to young people when we say, we often do these stats. 90% of students were stressed at university. Well, good. Stress is good for us. This is what helps us get our papers in. This is what helps us study more for the midterm. This is what helps us ski a really technical ski hill. This is what helps us win at a video game. This is what helps us do hard things, is a little bit of stress. What's important is that we understand how, when it's starting to affect our physical bodies, when we're not getting out of fight or flight ever, when we're not able to manage stress and not taking the breaks we need and doing physical activity and getting good sleep and good food and all of these things that we know we need to do to care for our mental health, that sets us up for burnout and for significant challenges with our mental health. And so helping students understand what good stress is and what it might look like for them, whether it's sleep disturbances, what does it look like when our mental health begins to shift towards illness or shift towards more symptomology or those types of things, making sure they're really aware of those as they come into university, really uncover them and talk about them. And when are those times where you need more help, that you're going to reach out to me. We've been through, if your young person has struggled with their mental health through high school, you know those things now as a parent. You know when the warning signs are, what they show up as, what it looks like when they're struggling, and to watch out for those things. Does that mean that they go in their room and shut the door? Well, that might look like them not returning your calls, or it might look like them. What is it going to look like with a little bit of distance between you? And how are you going to notice early and help them notice too that things are a bit compromised? So I think that those would be some of those pieces. The escape hatch, keeping it always open for your young person while simultaneously motivating them to keep working hard. And it's a tricky balance for us as parents, but it's really important, I think.
And I can appreciate the idea behind stress being something that helps us, but when is it too much? And being able to check in with your young person around that. And Dawn, thank you for that. I hope that viewers can really be thinking about the things that young people do want to know. And if they're not comfortable asking for help, that we make sure we've had the conversation with them so that they know we're open to it and what it looks like to ask for help, and reminding them that it's not easy and that things are going to look a little different than we think they will. So it's great to have all these backup options as what it could look like. Thank you for that. As we wrap up our time together, any final thoughts that you have that you want to make sure you share with families before we end our time together? Let's start with you, Dawn.
Well, one thing I was thinking of is definitely all our roles are changing. Like the student's role with school, but also with parents' roles with the student, in terms of life. And so it's just thinking about that awareness of these roles are changing. How are they going to look? We can't totally predict, but it's just that awareness of it's not going to be the same. And that's exciting at the same time as, change is always hard.
Thank you. Melissa?
I think probably just to take every opportunity. So I think there's a lot of things that students miss on campuses that can be so helpful. Like we have a student learning hub, and Dawn mentioned the tutoring, free programs, free services to help you flourish academically, and so that you do manage your stress, because you keep on top of things from the get-go of the term, even when a due date seems a long way off. Get working on things, get engaged in supports. There's so many things outside of strict health services that you can engage in. I think that was the other thing I was going to mention too, was if a young person is deeply connected to a health service that doesn't end when they're 18, can they stay connected to that? Can they do virtual appointments while they're away? If they've got a good connection with a counselor in their home community, keep it if you can, because those are really important. Most universities don't have more intensive services, and they'll just refer students back to town anyways to find more intensive mental health services. So if your young person is already well connected, I would encourage to try and maintain those connections, and whether they can do virtual appointments or when they come home for the weekend or things like that is really helpful. And yeah, that was the other thing that I meant to mention earlier that I
Great.
forgot.
Thank you for that insight. And I'm also hearing that things don't get easier in university. We just get better at dealing with the hard and giving ourselves permission to reach out for help when we really need it in those moments when things are too hard. Thank you both for your insights, for your caring, and for being there for our young people to make this hard time a little easier for them. So thank you to our funders and partners for supporting the creation of this resource. And thank you, our viewers, on behalf of the youth for taking time to learn with us. May you be kind to yourself as you find the ways that work for you in your youth, and wishing you moments of ease in the heart and knowing you aren't alone in this. Be well.